is the reason why he says he's going to occasion a funeral on 20th of January.
All right, Bayo, let's quickly run through the Daily Sun. On the Daily Sun, just beside the nameplate, you see Kaduna White Paper declares Shiite terrorists to confiscate property, prosecute El Zakzaki as a group protest. And let's now move to the lead story. Clamp down on judges. Justice Ademola, wife, now to face 11 charges. Couple's arraignment now December 13. And beside the picture story, federal government bans vehicles through import through land borders. That's on page 43. And Soyinka to hold private funeral on Trump's inauguration day. That's on page 19. And government's net credit TSA balance with the central bank stands at 1.19 trillion naira. Eminent Nigerians give Apex Bank kudos. And of course, story earlier, why I won't leave APC. Tinubu, that's below the picture story. I'll quickly also run through the authority. On the authority, above the nameplate, why we can't supply Niger State electricity. AEDC. Custom seizes container of jollof rice, yam porridge, and egusi soup from India. And on the sport and sing, National Sports Festival suffers another postponement. And the lead story, $2 billion Abacha loot. How Bagudu, Daura, Gwazo laundered the funds. That's 9 U.S. banks involved. That's a rider. Malami tussles with Nigerian attorney in America over legal fees. And, of course, finally, federal government bans vehicle import via land borders. Kingsley.
All right. Bayo, just before we come back to you, there are a number of stories that we have read from some of the papers over some time now. Now, there are also reactions to those stories, follow-up stories, if you like. Let me just go to page 6 of Daily Trust. Page 6 of Daily Trust. We took this story yesterday, also from Daily Trust. It says, this time, it says, FRSC official never threw stone in the moving vehicle. You remember the story about, the FRSC official who was alleged to have hauled a stone into a moving vehicle in Sokoto. Now, part of the story reads that the vehicle was overloaded and the driver didn't want to stop, at a checkpoint, when he was flagged down by the FRSC official, and that he actually hit a pavement while trying to meander in between some vehicles that were on the queue. So FRSC official never threw stone in moving vehicle. That's on page 6. Also on page 6 of Daily Trust is a story headlined, Abductors of Radio Benue journalist demand 80 million naira. 80 million naira had been demanded for the abductors of the Radio Benue journalist. She's a woman, by the way. Yeah. And then also on page 13, there's another follow-up story we talked about. We actually discussed it on this program, the exportation of grains, by farmers. Yes. Now, there's a story there on page 13. That's the business section of Daily Trust. It reads, the headline, Federal government won't stop grains exports to Niger and Chad. And this is attributed to the Minister of Agriculture, Ado. He was speaking yesterday at the African Economic Conference in Abuja, organized by the ADB and others. He said that the government was also ready to stock its 33 silos to ensure food security in the country.
Well, I thought that story was about 500 trucks of smuggled grains across the border, not the official export of grains.
Well, if it export, the customs will be involved. There will be documentation and so on and so forth. Whether smuggled or otherwise, there was alarm. There was an alarm rather that was raised about the likely impact of that. Because they said there's a bumper harvest this year. What happens?
And there could be famine in January. Yes, right. I think I recall that. Well, let's look at another situation whereby the facts are put in perspective. You will recall that there was an assertion that the federal government was in debit of about 4.7 trillion. It has overdrawn its account with the central bank. This was asserted by the former governor of Central Bank and the Emir of Kano. And a correction has been made. It says that the net balance of the federal government account is 1.19 trillion. And the Treasury single account has in it 2.6 trillion as of 2nd of December 2016. Meanwhile, President Yahya Jammeh went to election on Thursday, and by Friday, he lost election to Adama Barrow. And guess what? I am calling you to wish you all the best. President Yahya Jammeh called his opponent. The Gambian people have spoken, and I have no reason to contest the will of Allah. The country will be in your hands in January, and you are assured of my guidance and your transition. You are the elected president of the Gambia, and I wish you all the best. Adama Barrow won by 263,515 votes to those of 212,099 that President Yahya Jammeh scored. He had been president for 22 years, and he said, I came in on Friday, 22nd July 1999, and after 22 years, God is telling me that it is my time to go. I lost election Friday, 2nd December. I will advise you, without peace and stability, you can't achieve anything in Africa.
All right, Bayo, we'd like to thank you for being with us. Indeed, we had Ambassador Joe Keshi with us yesterday to discuss the outcome of the Gambian election. Yes. Yahya Jammeh, the outgoing president, once bragged that he could rule for 1 billion years if it was the will of Allah. But Allah has decided that it's time up for him, 22 years, autocratic rule, by the way. Bayo Atoyebe, thank you for being with us today. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll take on 2 subjects for discussion. The first, of course, has to do with the linkage between agriculture and industrialization in Africa. Can Africa feed itself and the rest of the world?
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Would you like some water? It's cold, especially for you.
Which era are you living in? We have a fridge.
When everything else in your house is from the present, then why are your toilet cleaning methods from the past? Harpic, all-in-one for you. Compared to other toilet cleaners, Harpic removes top stains, kills all germs, and removes bad odors for a shining, clean, and fresh toilet.
Wow.
You should also take the Harpic
All-in-one challenge.
Wow, Fanta! Wow, that great taste! The delicious bubbly Fanta! What could possibly get in our way? Drink your Fanta before someone else does. Enjoy the great tasting Fanta flavors!
All right, welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on Africa's largest TV network, the NTA. Now, let's lay the foundation for our discussion this morning. Agro-food industry is described by many as an integral part of economic growth of any country, especially against the backdrop that cash crop produce could be a major source of economic growth if properly harnessed. And Timothy Yusuf tells us more in this background report.
Potentials of the agro-industry towards nations' development cannot be overemphasized in any country, especially developing countries like Nigeria, which is rated to be among the highest producers of many crops that could be processed into value-added products to enhance foreign earnings. Nigeria and indeed sub-Saharan African countries could benefit immensely from the potentials inherent in the agro-food industry towards achieving food security if some perceived challenges confronting the sector are tackled headlong. Many believe that agriculture could be the mainstay of many economies, and it is fundamental to the socio-economic development of a nation because it is a major element and factor in national development. Hence, the agro-foods industry plays a fundamental role in the creation of income and employment opportunities in developing countries. Judging from the foregoing, many advantages they say abound when effective policies are enacted and implemented in the agriculture sector towards realizing potentials. However, it is noteworthy that policy formulations and implementation have remained a major problem in the development of the agro-food industry in the sub-Saharan African countries, including Nigeria. To maximally tap the potentials of agro-industry in sub-Saharan Africa and Nigeria in particular, certain factors that could promote agricultural performance must be properly addressed. Study shows that some of these factors include access to inputs, high demand for products, that is, market availability, availability of transport facilities, as well as availability of raw materials. Also, the need for collaborations between industry and research institutions must be encouraged, in addition to the need for upgrading research facilities in research institutions through adequate funding by government. The private sector must also contribute towards provision of necessary facilities in these institutions, as these may help in fostering research activities and improving performance in the agro-industry.
All right, Timothy Yusuf, thank you very much there for that background report. Of course, we saw clips of farmers on the farmland with back-breaking labor, you know, the hoe and machete in their hands. But that's part of what we'll be discussing this morning. And we have a number of guests with us here by the Abuja studios, 2 guests, by the way, and another guest at our Lagos Network Center. At this time, we'd like to welcome an agric economist, of course, a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria, Dr. Emeka Okengu. Dr. Okengu, a pleasure to have you on the program.
Pleasure to be here. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, and then we also have with us in the Abuja studios is the Chief Economist and Director of Strategy and Analysis at the UNDP Africa Regional Bureau, Dr. Ayodele Odushola. Dr. Odushola, a pleasure to have you on the program this morning.
It's a pleasure, and good morning, Nigerians.
Okay.
And in our Lagos Center is the founder Growing Businesses Foundation, Dr. Ndidi Nnoli Edozie. Good morning and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Morning.
All right, let's begin this way, Dr. Emeka. Nigeria is said to have a lot of potentials, especially in terms of agriculture, arable land. We can grow almost anything. We have the population, we have the people. But in spite of all of this, we have not actually, been able to feed ourselves. So what could be responsible for this?
Thank you very much. First, I'm not an agric economist, I'm a development economist. But I run an agro-allied center. I run a resource center. First, I don't know how to use the word depression. I think over the years we have lost a lot of steam. Okay, from the 40s and 50s, where you used to see pyramids of cash crops and food crops. What you now have are people pushing around 2 or 3 bags of grains in barrows. So it is not a question of potential. We've lost a lot of grounds. We have, instead of progressing, we have digressed in a lot of ways. First, you were talking about our having potentials. It's a shame that at this stage in our nation's life, we're still talking about potentials. We are not talking about capabilities, and we're not talking about capacities. You talk about human resources. It's also a shame that we have this very huge population, and a very minuscule percentage of it, is actually capital. Because what you need is just not human resources. What you need is human resources that has currency, that has capital, that has capacity, that has skills. So for us, I think there's a lot of trouble. First, we're not facing imminent starvation. People have started starving. We're not facing imminent famine. Famine is already in the land. And I'm telling you this from the backdrop of somebody who is there on the field. The yields are bad, very bad. People talk about bumper harvest, and when you have a bumper harvest, what usually happens is that you have a price dip, a price fall. You're a woman. You could help us, by saying, doctor, you're wrong. Since after this bumper harvest announced, I'm now buying a mudu of masara at the 70 naira or even 100 naira that I used to buy it before. Not one food item has dropped in price. And you know what? Harvest is over. Okay, so I think what we should do is to start looking at the seriousness of the fact that we have 170 million people who are facing imminent food danger. And it is also more worrisome that we've started even producing our own rice. And the rice being imported from India, and I can tell you this authoritatively, sells for about 16,200, 16,300. The one produced in Nigeria sells between Do you understand what I'm saying?
20,000.
Okay, so this is where maybe along the line of the conversation, we'll be looking at what issues have caused this. But I think in laying the foundation for this conversation, we are in a crisis. And the earlier we begin to see it as one, the better for all of us in this country.
All right, Dr. Okengu, thanks a lot. But let's extrapolate that to the African continent, which actually is the focus of our conversation this morning, the linkage between agriculture and industrialization, and in particular, what our Greek does in the first instance to say, look, feed your own population. Now, Dr. Odushola, other than perhaps some of the very well-known factors, such as wars, and displacement of populations and drought, for instance, why is it that Africa mostly has been unable to feed itself?
Thank you very much. Actually, I see a context in which Africa has the fundamentals and the potentials to feed itself. But unfortunately, we are working in a situation of paradox. Paradox in the sense that we have food insecurity in the midst of fertile land that the whole world is looking at. We have 600 million hectare uncultivated land in Africa, which is 60% of the total global uncultivated land, meaning the whole world is looking at us. And it's kind of a paradox when you have what it takes, not to feed Africa alone, to feed the whole world, but you cannot feed yourself. And you are spending about 34 billion naira, the $1 billion every year on food, importation of food items. Now, wasting your scarce commodities, scarce foreign exchange earning. Now, the issue is very simple. It is only in Africa you see a situation where it's only about 6% of the total arable land that is being irrigated. We rely heavily on rain-fed agriculture, which is the worst in the world. No other developing region has it. And as a result of that, we rely on rudimentary farming. Rudimentary farming cannot take any country, anywhere in the world, out of the issue of food insecurity. When we have refused or failed to invest heavily in agriculture, the African leaders have agreed that, we have to spend 10% of the annual budget on agricultural transformation. But only about 6 countries in Africa have been able to spend close to that. Many others are far, far below that. Investment in agriculture is a situation whereby you have to depend on what we call all-year-round farming, not on rain-fed agriculture, where rain falls in some part of the continent for only about 2 to 3 months in a year. What do you want to produce? Now, the issue is this. We have, again, a kind of biased development policies where we focus on urban centers. The rural areas are totally dilapidated. Where in Africa do you see a situation whereby youth are encouraged or are interested in going into farming? The average age of an African farmer is 50 years. What can they do? Nothing. So I think we have the potential to really feed ourselves and at the same time feed the whole world, but we're not doing the right thing.
I was just wondering, before we bring in Dr. Ndidi Edozie into the conversation, can we make some exceptions, to what you just painted, the picture you just painted? South Africa, and before year 2000, when the land policy became disastrous for Zimbabwe. These were countries that were able to feed themselves. Do you have an idea of, maybe let our viewers know what the magic was and still is, and to an extent, cash crop farming in Kenya?
Thank you very much. You're very right. Agriculture today accounts for about 5% of South African GDP. It shows that it has fully transformed because they invest heavily on commercial farming. Now, in Africa, we see agriculture as a way of life, but agriculture should be seen as a business enterprise for you to really be able to use it to transform your economy and at the same time support growth and development. In South Africa, you see an average farmer having nothing less than 50 to 100 hectares of land, an average. That's the smallest in terms of those. But you have those that are talking about thousands of hectares. Now, in Nigeria, for instance, If you look at those, the population of farmers that are only managing just only 1 hectare of farm as the farm hold, they are in millions. So what can you do with 1 hectare of land? Again, in South Africa, in Zimbabwe before the land saga, and currently as the current move in Zambia, Tanzania, and Ethiopia, you can see that things are changing. Now the average small farm hold is going to about 20 to 25 hectares of land from one. Now, I went around, I had the opportunity of going around some African countries just about a year ago. I was, for instance, specifically in Ethiopia. I was amazed about what I saw. You go to provinces in Oromia, for instance, you see, you move around within 1 or 2 kilometers, you see pumping machine wetting their crops. Now, that's a place that only has rainfall for about four months in a year. But now they have started growing what we call all-season farming. And that's the kind of farming we're talking about. It's not the one you use your hose and cutlasses every time, where there are no input, there are no improved seedling, there are no input, you don't have tractors there, you still have your hose and cutlasses. No country can grow its agriculture with hose and cutlasses. No country can use agriculture to serve as the linchpin of industrialization with the kind of rudimentary farming. And I want to give you an example. There was a time we had a mission to New Zealand. New Zealand, they have turned agriculture to be a business, not really a way of life. That's where you see somebody coming out of secondary school and say, I want to go to farm. They are eager to go to farm because the returns that comes out of farm is more than any other sector in terms of the profit that comes out of that. They were able to manage that. There hasn't been any form of glut in terms of, oh, we have ample harvest this time around. But again, there's one thing I have to let you know in terms of the dramatic transformation in South Africa and what is going on in Zambia, Tanzania, and Rwanda, as well as Ethiopia. Now, in West Africa, or generally in Africa, about 30 to 35% of what is produced is lost in post-harvest management. You produce now, before it gets to the market, almost about 30-35% of it is lost. If you are able to hold that and able to even make sure those losses are blocked, the wastages are blocked, then agriculture in Africa, even in spite of the rudimentary something, will be fully
Dr. Odushola, that then you'll be talking about the industrialization leg of it, together with infrastructure and so on and so forth, I believe. But we'll come back to you in the course of this conversation. Let's bring in now Dr. Ndidi Edozian. Dr. Edozian, you've listened to two guests here in the Abuja studios. What's your take on this? I would like you perhaps to also have an accent on the point articulated by Dr. Odushola, why it appears that the greater part of Africa hasn't been able to make the transition from agriculture as a way of life to agriculture as a business.
I believe to say that we haven't made that transition from agriculture as a way of life to agriculture as a business is not to look at the realities on the ground. About 60% of our population is employed through agriculture. And I think when we look at agriculture, you've got to look at it across the value chain. So in a way, for the sake of the argument, this shirt I'm wearing, consciously wearing, is agriculture because it comes from cotton. And we have to begin to think and conceptualize agriculture beyond just tilling of the land to the range of value-added services and value provision that one can bring. I'll give you 3 examples talking about youth and agriculture. So I'm an angel investor also, in addition to being an academic, and I listened to 3 pitches recently by young people. One of them was a lady who runs greenhouses. Another is a lady who pushes urban farming using containers. So in other words, containers as the greenhouses and trying to produce vegetables in a very small space. And the third, which was the most interesting but the least refined, is a technology platform that encourages urban dwellers to invest in rural farmers. So the whole notion of thinking that we must move to industrial agriculture immediately, why can't we mine what we have? which is the reality that a good 60% of our population is still very rural-based, and their biggest challenge at the moment is actually access to capital and access to the infrastructure that enables them to transport their crop, and also access to the inputs when they need them on an affordable basis, some of which actually can be resolved with the access to capital, access to inputs question. And the second is actually business solutions that help to resolve logistics. And there is a range of actors in this regard that are beginning to create solutions to this. Now, I wanted to speak to the fact that we haven't, you know, leadership is trading in hope. I had a conversation in the studio with the staff here, and I asked them, what are you looking to your leaders for? And they say, we're not looking to them for anything, because quite frankly, we don't trust them anymore, and we've lost hope. We just work as hard as we can on a day-to-day basis. My big question to the media at the moment is, we're talking about a famine on the one hand, we're talking about low yields, we're talking about the fact that we're going to try and stop the export of foods. I was reading a report where I understand that the presidency is appealing to the moral incidents of people who are producing grain not to export. And on the other hand, we know that we have a foreign exchange deficit, and we're saying anybody who has exports and can export, please export so we have more foreign exchange coming in. Now, maybe us who are a little bit more sophisticated understand what that means. But for the average person, there are two things that are really important. One is a very clear message from the leadership as to where we're going and what we're trying to achieve, and where in our little worlds we can each play a little role towards creating this greater Nigeria that has food security. And secondly is the coordination of the different initiatives to ensure that everyone, and I keep talking about the very, very important role of youth, the very important role of technology, the very important role of entrepreneurships in the entire value chain of ensuring that we're able to move towards a nation that not just is a food secure nation, but is also an economically viable nation that has jobs and creates employment by leveraging what we have, our greatest asset always, always being our people and the skill sets that they already have as a foundation which we can build upon.
All right, I just, Dr. Ndidi Noliadosin, I just wanted to find out from you. You talked earlier about some examples of how the value chain would indicate that agric is now really a way of, sorry, it's not a business, rather than a way of life. What do you describe? Can we have a critical mass from those things versus what Dr. Odushola was saying, that we needed, of course, agriculture first on an industrial scale and then have the linkage to industrialization?
It's a great question, and it's a very important question. The point is that if we were not already an agro-based economy, where 60% of our people are actually living the Sustainable Development Goals of no poverty and zero hunger, will not be attainable if we don't realize the fact that the majority of our population are engaged in subsidiary farming, if only to feed themselves, but also to service the market. It's the reality on ground. Why would we deny that? Even when you do industrial farming and you're planting on large hectares of land, you always talk about outgrowers. Who are your outgrowers? Your outgrowers are the people who are already farming and who you're hoping to increase their yields of, who you're hoping to provide a market for. So what does the average farmer want? The average farmer may have, and I'll give you a practical example. So we ran a program in Kano, this is the Growing Businesses Foundation now, 273 farmers, 65% male, 35% female. We worked with the Kano state government. Our objective was, what will happen if we take 20 million naira and invest in these rural farmers and ensure that what we're investing in is, one, buy all the inputs, supply them to the farmers. each of them had on average 1 to 2 hectares of land under cultivation, but ensure that they have the necessary support to triple their yields at least. 2, give a certain amount of funding so that during the time when they're before harvest, they have liquidity, so they're not selling out to a middleman who is going to sell them at a very low price, buy it at a very low price and take all the margin. 3, guarantee offtake at a fair price and give them the option of selling to the market if it's not a fair price. What was the result? 100% repayment rates, savings after they had repaid their loans of 3.5 million naira, that was their money and that was now in the bank, yields that had tripled at the very least. I think we ended up with 730 hectares under cultivation. That means each person ended up farming about 3 hectares of land. So when you are able to leverage, that's the point I was making, when you're able to leverage what already exists, as opposed to looking at what is happening in another person's country and trying to replicate what is not yet yours. My argument always has been, we need to build on our strengths, on our people, on what we know and what we're already doing, and to enhance that and embellish it with industrialization, but not stop what we have or starve what we have in this pursuit of an ideal that may never come.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ndoli Edozie. Thank you very much. But then I'd like Dr. Emeka to also speak to some of the issues that she has raised, the issues of values being added. And she also said what we also should be looking at is access to loan by farmers. And Dr. Odushola earlier, said that some of these countries where we are having, food insecurity, not just him, but experts have also said that we are not investing. These are countries that are not investing in agriculture, but yet desires to get, what agriculture yields for other countries.
Well, thank you. I think first, Dr. Odushola had talked about South Africa. Probably what he also didn't say is that South Africa is actually has less than 16% of its total land as arable. So what has made the difference? What has made the difference is technology. He also mentioned Kenya. Okay, Kenya has gotten into a mixture of food and cash crops. In fact, Kenya is one of the biggest hubs now for rose flower export from Africa. Every other country he's mentioned has hinged their agriculture on, yes, and this is where the difference is. Every program you run that is not predicated on what you can call sustainable infrastructure will run into a lot of problems. It's just a matter of time. While I was at the World Bank as a consultant, and when I finished my little stay there, from the little experiences I gathered, I felt after 50 I needed to do something a little more rewarding for me. So I get to this place and I built this little center in Abuja here, where I'm doing what they call climate smart integrated agro-processing or agro-resource center. If you come to that center today, you have a little of everything. And what I'm trying to do there, every machinery you see in that center is machineries that are constructed locally in Nigeria from my feed mills, and this will shock you. In my feed mill, I have what they call an extruder. Usually extruders are imported. I got some young people and said to them, you must do an extruder for me. You'll be shocked at what's happening to that extruder. So I keep telling people that agriculture is one leg of it. Food production is the second leg. The link is technology, okay? And then when you're talking about sustainability and you're talking about volumes, you cannot get value if you don't have volumes. That's very key, okay? Whatever it is you do that is not driven by volumes that are sustainable would eventually collapse. Remember that in those days when we used to shout about agriculture, giving us all the foreign exchange, you had volumes. Volumes that could carry infrastructure, road infrastructure, sea infrastructure. Okay, you had tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons. There's no urban center in this country that was not predicated on warehouses that were now warehousing agricultural products. And none of those products were just given to local farmers to farm. They were based on outcomes from research institutes. From your area, Kingsley, that was NIFO. Okay, from somewhere in Jos, you had the National Veterinary Production Institute or something. You had the Potato Research Institute. So you had inputs that were driven by proper research. So what are we trying to do? What we are trying to do is, first and foremost, get the people who should drive this process. And who are these? Ministry of Science and Technology. It will shock you to know that NABDA, which is the National Biotechnical Development Agency, is under the Ministry of Science and Technology. Okay? Raw Materials Research Development Council is under the Ministry of Science and Technology. This other one they call somewhere in Gwagwalada or something, CETEC or something, one of the research agencies that is also into food processing, is under the Ministry of Science and Technology. Now, what's the relationship, what's the synergy between these people? This is where we as a country, we are lacking it. So when you want to do pilots to say, okay, fine, you have probably, let's try this process. In doing that off-taker program, you must have first infrastructure to do off-taking. And what are those infrastructure? No matter how much you want to off-take from the people who've produced, if you don't have storage facilities, it isn't going to work. Okay? No matter how much you want to encourage export of these products, if you don't have packaging, okay, it's not going to work. So you must be able to first align your real sector, what you might call your back end, to your front end. And how do you do this? And what are we promoting for Nigeria? We are promoting infrastructure as a basis of aligning agriculture. And that infrastructure you're talking about has to be indigenous. Today, there's a program with, I think they call it YTO Kamako. It's a $4.5 billion project that the federal government is promoting. Okay, states are supposed to be going to China. I think some states have even gone to China to go and get agro equipment. And you'll be shocked that the whole of the 4.5 billion that is supposed to be some soft loan we are going to be paying back in 20 years is going to be given to a company they call Kamako. That's an agro-producing company, agricultural equipment producing company in China. If you split this by states, probably 38 now, putting Abuja and the federal government, each would be $180 million. That is going to be a loan that could be paid back in 18 years' time or 20 years' time. But if you gave probably 1/4 of that amount to the Ministry of Science and Technology, you will be shocked at what amount of equipment. And we were talking about agriculture at this lower level. What's a tractor? What is a plow? What's a water pump? What's a sprinkler? Okay, these are very simple tools that are already being produced in Nigeria here. You'll be shocked that if you enter into Ministry of Science and Technology, you'll be seeing Keke Napep designed in Nigeria. You'll be seeing agro equipments. You'll be seeing solar dryers. You'll be seeing germplasm technology. Okay, you'll be seeing seed multiplication. But these things have been left at the realm of what you call public sector governance and red tape. There's no relationship between the private sector and the public sector vis-a-vis of taking of these technologies developed, acquired, reversed engineering. So what must happen is, like I said earlier, to turn your skills, to turn your human resources into human capital, you must give skills. On a last note, so I don't take a lot of this space, you have a lot of pesticides, okay? And most of these pesticides are approved by the Ministry of Agriculture. But let me tell you what happens. The moment they approve it, they also do not now do enough sensitization, enough mobilization, enough education to say, this is the quantity that you're going to be putting. Okay, so what happens, that farmer goes to the market, takes that approved pesticides, puts a lot of it into it, poisons his yields. He could have some bumper yield, but by the end of the day, he wouldn't even pass the test for animal feedlots. Are you listening to me?
Well, I'm listening. What are you talking about, a challenge of extension services?
When you talk about extension services, challenge of building what you call the base infrastructure. We haven't got into extension services yet. We're talking about what do you guys were showing some play here, and then you saw people carrying one sack of, this one carries one sack and transfers to the other person. I mean, you didn't see any process there. You saw people carrying from one grain one lot to the other one this to the other one. You don't see any tests. So for the fact that the whole of Kuje can produce beans, one bag of beans from the wrong source can spoil the remaining 10,000 bags that you've produced. Right. Okay, so we haven't even gotten to the point of extension services. What we're talking about is, can we be able to play the ground role? And probably, you know,
I thought, Dr. Okengwu, I thought what you were describing a situation where, say, there's an approval for the use of a particular kind of pesticide, and then there is no additional follow-up in terms of information or education or enlightenment of the end users. That's the function of an extension worker.
No, that's the function of what you call the back-end infrastructure, and that's what I'm saying to you.
What kind of
beautiful. If you have in every community some kind of infrastructure, some kind of program that pulls people together, okay, so that when you're not doing your extension, you're not doing it in isolation. You're doing it within a defined framework. You're saying, in this area, you come from Ugeli village, and within Ugeli village, you have...
Ugeli is a town. I'm sure our viewers there will challenge that when you say village. It's a town. It's a city, by the way.
Who classified it as a city?
Ugeli is a city.
Population.
Who classified it?
Just proceed with your
Okay, all right. Ugeli people, I'm sorry. You know, it's a mega city. I forgot I should have said that. You see, my point is very simple, Kingsley, my brother. We must build this thing properly. We must build the proper synergies. That's just the point I'm trying to make. Yeah. We must be able to do the proper delineations. We must be able to understand the roles and limitations and where they should stop of Ministry of Agriculture. We are putting so much on the shoulders of Ministry of Agriculture. Okay, and if you understand, like I said to you, agriculture, food production must start where agriculture stops. And then there must be some people who should be able to help in that process. That's just the point.
All right, Dr. Okengwu, thanks. In addition to some of the points you just raised, perhaps again, we need to remind our viewers that we've had here, Rhoda, the Honorable Minister of Science and Tech, who's talked about the launch, inauguration of a Science and Tech Council headed by the President. It's been in the doldrums for well over 30 years, and that's supposed to aggregate and leverage on the various capacities in relevant ministries and MDAs to deal with some of the issues you just talked about, where you have disparate entities dealing with research and they're not be able to provide the appropriate linkage. But let's come back again to Dr. Ayodele Olushola. Dr. Odushola, that's a point that I would like you to talk about. Namely, we say, look, we don't have enough investment in agriculture. Then we also blame the inadequate collaboration between the public and private sectors. From your perspective, what kind of investment is needed at this stage? And answer this question that I've just asked you against the background of what Dr. Onoli Aduzian said in Lagos, that look, rather than seeking to reach out for new ideas and impose those ones, build on what you already have. So what kind of investments would you like to see capped on what we have now to be able to drive our agricultural production, move on to the stage of industrialization?
Thank you very much. And I just want to let you know that the context matters. We have what it takes. And if you look at the poverty profile in Africa and in Nigeria, close to 60% of people that are categorized as being poor are farmers from the farming communities. And that's not the kind of farming we're looking for. We don't want to use farming as a coping strategy for poverty management. No. We want to use farming as a way of life. I mean, as a kind of business that transforms life and transforms the economy. That's the kind of thing we're looking for. And again, I wanted to give you the context. Exactly in 1976, I had the privilege. I was in secondary school then. Then to go to what we call the farm settlement created in the old Western region. And I'm talking specifically, we had one in Ayetoro and one in, they call a place in Bugila and so many other in Oyo. It's a farm settlement that has a kind of all it takes to do modern farming. With, tractors, with all equipment, with improved seedlings, with fertilizers, even they brought bank to those settlements. They had them all over, including Benin. So, and on the basis of this, you are encouraged to go to farm because everything is there. Now, it's a kind of modern farming system that was introduced in the 60s in Nigeria. And now, this is 2016. We cannot even boast of any of them standing functionally effectively. Now, I want to give you an example too to show that it's not Nigeria doesn't have what it takes to do it. In 1976, Malaysia came to Nigeria to understudy the palm oil production, the one we have in Benin. In 1996, where I was working for in Nigeria before I left Nigeria, we had what we call a mission to the same country, Malaysia. They were shocked. What are you guys looking for here? Because we want to talk about how they do their own planning system. They said, sorry, you are not serious. We came to your country in 1976 to understudy palm oil production when you were #1 palm oil producer in the world. And in 1996, when we were doing the same something, we were visiting them, they were #1 in the world, and Nigeria was no more in the map of palm oil producer. So this is what I'm just talking about. We have, in terms of investment, coming to your question. Now, you see, whether we like it or not, government is supposed to be a development catalyst. Infrastructure in irrigation, again, making sure farm inputs are made available at subsidized rates. China, most of those rice that I think are coming from China, they're not coming at the market price. They're subsidized. So if you want to leverage, you want to create development frontier, shift development frontier, you must be able to put some kind of investment there to modernize the sector. We must modernize agriculture if you want it to be the linchpin of industrialization and the linchpin of development.
Let me ask this question specifically. I mean, we are seeing Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, get into some phase of agriculture, either tomato paste in factory in Kano, which was closed sometime. I'm not sure whether it's been reopened. I think they had some challenge. But some person would ask the question, say in Africa, why, in Nigeria, why is it that our money bags do not seem to be enthusiastic in putting their money into agriculture? Look, somebody could say, all I just need to do is to build a factory that will produce nothing but tractors. I would say, look, I will do nothing else but to set up a factory that will produce so-called pesticides and so on and so forth. And I would say, okay, we're going to organize cooperatives, give them the seed money they need, to be able to proceed. And then we harvest. What is that linkage that we have not been able to catalyze, between the public and private sectors in driving agriculture?
I think the first starting point, the idea is very important. There's hardly any country that transforms that without having a strong linkage with the private sector. Now, the issue is, I think there's some impediments in the sector that is hindering some of these money bags in Nigeria to really invest in that. But again, I just want you to know that there used to be some time when we had money bags really investing in agriculture. That was the time of Musa Yar'Adua, Abiola, the Bagudus, and the like. They were heavily. And we thought if that one has been continued, it will have transformed what we call the agricultural system because of the technology we rub on small-scale farmers. But again, all those ones I mentioned, they're dead. So we need that strategic engagement with them. Again, the financial system will be linked to the agricultural sector. Once the financial system, because there is hardly any average farmer that can go to any commercial bank in Nigeria and get credit. Now we used to have agricultural credit guarantee scheme with the central bank to use it as a way of guaranteeing loans to farmers from commercial banks where it will not be market rate. You have to cap it. There is no farmer that will be able to borrow in the current interest rate of 20, 30% and say you want to make a good return. No. Please, we need a single-digit interest rate for farmers in Nigeria and in Africa for them to be able to have access to capital that they will use to transform agriculture and promote development.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Odushola. But very quickly, let's get the views of Dr. Noli Edozie. You actually have been speaking to what Dr. Odushola actually said, but I'd like you to speak more to it, the issue of access to loan. And then Kingsley asked the question, he said, why is it that we're not having, people we think in Nigeria should invest in agriculture? Why are they not investing, especially at the industrial level, as this is a very important sector?
Okay, I think you've mentioned a specific company, which is also Africa's largest company, and perhaps the largest single investor in the continent. And let's link that to agriculture. I thought it was incredible, this connection between one, agricultural production, and secondly, food. And the fact that food security actually means not the production, but it's having available, affordable food to eat in sufficient quantities for a population. And beyond that, when you talk about industrialization, it's to have enough of the standards that can be exported to generate the foreign exchange that our country sorely needs. Now, let's look at that one entity which you spoke about, namely Dangote. I know one of the things that we could do, one of the sore issues is farm-to-market roads. We have poor road infrastructure. So why don't we just switch and stop building roads out of tar? Why don't we build more roads out of cement? Why don't we enter into a long-term agreement that is almost like a loan or a bond to our own country and build out this country's road infrastructure so that where the rural areas are and where farming is done, there is actually access to markets for harvest. That's point one. Point two, I recall that in the space of foods, there was a time when we used to import pasta. And right now, at least you can go into every store, and if pasta is your staple, you can buy it at very, very low rates because it's produced locally. I do happen to know that there are investments, for example, en masse in rice, not just by Dangote, also Olam and a number of other local players, so that we're reducing the amount of rice that we import into the country. Again, the beautiful thing about agriculture is it's what you sow that you reap. And it's a question of actually understanding the cycles of nature and doing it in elements. I am all for the modernization of agriculture, but again, I keep saying, we have limited resources. We need to build on what we have and the skill sets that we have. We will not be able to build out the irrigation infrastructure to drive irrigation-led farming for a while. So if we are dependent on rainfall-fed farming, then perhaps what we need to do is go to agencies like the Nigerian Meteorological Agency and put in the technology that is required to ensure that our farmers have better information as to when will the rain fall, will there be a drought, will there be excess rainfall, how does that actually affect my planting? Can we create a situation where by just a single SMS, leveraging technology, the rural farmer has more information about that? Can we find ways in which we can leverage our traditional culture of communal resources and share resources like a tractor that is owned? You know, in my village, they say a goat that belongs to everyone starves. So when we talk about resources to the communities, we also need to talk about the ownership and the management structures of those resources, and tractors and technology is part of the inputs. I thought there was a very important point that was raised, namely when we actually drive, the other key area, by the way, and I think that's in the news at the moment as well, is not only are we having the largest refinery built in Nigeria, that refinery, there's also the thought process as to how do we take our natural resources and use those to produce fertilizer locally so that we can stop importing fertilizer. I'm not a big fan of chemically fed food, and I will explain why in a minute because one of the other speakers alluded to it. However, if we produce our own fertilizer and we produce it en masse and it's standardized, then the education of our populace on how best to use fertilizer is critical. Now, we keep talking about food security. The point that was made earlier about the fact that we import fertilizer, but we neglect to educate our farmers on how to use and apply the fertilizer means that, one, it has an impact on harvest and yield, but more dangerously, it has a potential impact on our own health and well-being. So what is the responsibility actually of, again, I keep talking to leadership in terms of communicating clearly that allows well-meaning Nigerians, the average populace, to put their hands to the plow and do the work that we all need to do. It is not right for us to all point at government and say, government, you haven't done this, government, you haven't done that. But the one area where government does have to help us is communication, coordination, and one clear message and vision that we can all be part of.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ndidi Noli Adozie of the Lagos Business School. We thank you very much for joining us from our Lagos Network Center this morning. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
We'll take the tweets that we have right now. Our viewers are taking advantage of our Twitter handle at NTAGMN. And the very first tweet is from Chibuzo Jonas, and he says, removing barriers to regional trade presents benefits to farmers, consumers and government, increase in agro machinery to farmers.
And then we have this from Ibrahim Tudu. He tweets, yes, agro-allied industries can lift Africa only if we can continue with the present momentum. We lost our way long ago because of oil.
And he also tweets, if we don't diversify and embrace agric, we will be told to do so the hard way by hunger. We can't eat our cake by not going to the farm.
Sonny Michael Omakoji, when our leaders begin to show political will, industrialization can be achieved and there will be food sufficiency in Africa.
Mike Anyoku tweets, the importance of agriculture for economic growth and development cannot be overstated. Governments must act swiftly now.
And Uche Index has this tweet, I believe for effective agriculture as a business, post-harvest infrastructure is a necessity.
And Baba Oliver tweets, it's worrisome information manipulation remains a norm. Prices of food and necessary goods shot by a minimum of, I think, 300%, but NBS puts inputs at 18.5. I'm trying to make sense of that. But then, thank you so much for your tweets that are coming in. Please, you can get the tweets. They can keep coming in at NTAGMN.
All right, so that's the much that we can take for the discussion segment. We did indicate earlier that we'll also be taking the second item. Tomorrow, Ghanaians are, of course, going to the post, but just before we take on that subject, we would like to thank our guest who's been with us, Dr. Emeka Ukengu, a development economist. Thank you always for your thoughts. We also would like to thank Dr. Ayodele Odushola. It's the Chief Economist and Director of Strategy and Analysis, UNDP Africa Regional Bureau. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll continue with the program.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so let the change begin from within. Look at you, Ogeruola. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
Chairman of all chairmen. Oh, let me wash your hand for you. Don't worry. Let me take toothpick and... Hey. According to Professor Tranquilizer, I am disappointed, aghast, crestfallen, and vanquished at your shameful display.
This week on your award-winning comedy series, Professor John Bull, starring Kanayo Okanayo, Mercy Johnson, Queen Wokoye, Yomi Fash Lanso, Oguz Baba.
I'd like to see Mr. Udo Etu. I hear you now, but find me something. Are you mad? Go.
Goodness, August, you're showing your shit.
Oh.
Very nice man, generous.
Okay, anything for the guests. Maybe feature or something.
Happy weekend, sir. Thank you.
Today is Wednesday.
Professor John Bull, this Tuesday and Friday, 8:30 to 9 p.m. on NTA Network, International, and Star Times.
I'm finished. Who finished you?
Find me something, find me something, man.
Over and out. Welcome to the new speed of...
All right, welcome back. Our second item for discussion is the Ghana election, and 15.7 million registered Ghanaian voters expected to file out tomorrow in another historic election to elect one president, and of course 275 members of parliament. This is Ghana's 6th election since the country returned to democratic governance in 1993. Let's of course set a foundation for this discussion by taking a look at this report put together by Timothy Yusuf.
Ghana's general election is to hold on the 7th of this month to elect a president and members of parliament. The poll was originally scheduled for 7th November 2016, but the date was rejected by parliament. The president is elected using the two-round system, while the 275 members of parliament will be elected in single-member constituencies using first-past-the-post voting. Over 16 people had filed with the Election Commission to run for president. However, 12 presidential candidates were disqualified due to incorrect filling procedures. There was some controversy that the candidates were disqualified due to political gain. The Electoral Commission has denied all accusations. Competing for presidency are the incumbent president, John Dramani Mahama of the National Democratic Congress, his main challenger, Nana Akufo-Addo of the New Democratic Party, and others. Analysts believe that tomorrow's election will be devoid of controversies identified in previous elections.
Once again, we'd like to thank you there, Timothy Yusuf, for that background report. Now we have with us in the studios Nigeria's former ambassador to Liberia, Ambassador Ayo Adigun. Ambassador Adigun, once again, our pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning. Thank you.
And then we also have joining us by Skype at this time from Accra is Ghana's High Commissioner to Nigeria, William Azuma Kanyirige. Your Excellency Kanyirige, it's our pleasure to have you on the program.
The pleasure is mine too, and have a good morning.
All right. You're 1 hour behind us. I hope we didn't have to wake you up too early. And then also with us is our correspondent there, that's NTA's correspondent. He's covering the election, Muhammad Ali, also via Skype from Accra. Muhammad Ali, how are you?
Thank you very much, Kinsley. I'm doing very well. And how are you?
Very well, too. Very well, too. So good to have you gentlemen on the program. But let's begin with Muhammad Ali, our correspondent. The background report there, also given by our correspondent here in Abuja, indicating what the outlook is like for tomorrow's election. Now, you've been on the ground for some days now. What is it that you have found, and what are the prospects for tomorrow's voting?
Well, Kinsley, actually, Ghanaians are in a high spirit, and the campaigns were rounded off yesterday, and especially that of the two political parties, the main political parties, the NDC, on whose flagship the president is contesting, as well as the main opposition candidate, who is Nana Akufo-Addo. And everywhere, the people are excited. They are looking forward to the election, and you can see, you don't need to be told that everybody is eagerly waiting for this particular election. I was also yesterday at the Electoral Commission of Ghana, where the chairperson of that commission, Charlotte Osai, addressed some international observers, ECOWAS in particular, where she said the commission is ready. Everything that needs to be done has been done. And as at yesterday, she said 90 out of the 97 items that are needed for the election, 95 were already disposed, and then they were allocated to all the 28,992 polling stations across the 10 regions of Ghana. And the security is also ready. They have 64,000 security personnel, as well as 6,000 military backup for the election. And I think they are good to go.
All right, Mohammed, what's the atmosphere like? There have been reports of some pockets of violence. Is the violence enduring, or is subsided now that voting is at hand?
Actually, Kinsley, even the Electoral Commission raised the issue, the concern about violence, that the there were towards the build-up to this election, there were pockets of violence here and there. But the peace pact being able to brokered by the National Peace Council of Ghana has cooled some nerves, and they are looking forward to peaceful elections. Actually, the fear is that Ghana has never witnessed so much violence and tension as far as election is concerned, since the advent of the Fourth Republic. But the fears are being allayed because the traditional council, the religious leaders and what have you have been dousing the tension, and they are looking forward to a hit-free election because the political parties have come together to make declaration and even sign peace pact against electoral violence, injustice, and impunity.
All right, thank you very much. Muhammad Ali would come back to you also in the course of this discussions, of course, to get more information from you because you're on ground over there right now. But then, first of all, let's speak with Liberia's ambassador. That's former Nigeria's ambassador to Liberia. That's Ayo Adigun. You've just listened to our correspondent, Muhammad Ali. Ghana is known to be an example, of what democratic system is like in Africa, but this time there are a lot of concerns about this particular election. Why is this?
Yes, precisely. There are many run-up hiccups to the election. Initially some presidential candidates were disqualified by the Ghana Electoral Commission, and this created a lot of anxiety. But later the court intervened, and they restated some of them, and we have 7 presidential contestants. There's no election that is totally free of some hiccups like that. But the issue is that at the end of the day, there will be, I see that eventually they will manage through. The issue is this question of people are concerned about the direction of the economy. If you look at the Ghanaian domestic economy, some people feel that the CD is overvalued, and the common people believe it does not help them. But again, although this government of John Mahama has brought about some foreign direct investment, especially from the Western world, and the economy is picking up despite the crisis generally of economic woes, and even some of the countries going into technical recession. He's been managing through. I even learned he did a lot of infrastructural upgrading. He did a lot of infrastructure upgrading. You can give kudos to him. When he was vice president under the late Atamis, took over in 2012. He's been trying to upgrade infrastructure, and he made Ghana investment friendly. Even we learned that during our own crisis now, a lot of airlines, Nigerian business relocated to Ghana. That shows, in essence, that the economy was doing fine. So be that as it may, but people have never said the common people who are the wrong of the society will complain that, oh, CD is stable, but it's overvalued. Some people are crying that it should be devalued. But in the essence of it, I think it's doing well. But the opposition say, well, you are doing it. Opposition wants to take over the Akufo, the man in the Patriotic Party thinks he can do more. He has been the challenger. Although this is going to be his third term bid, like our former president, our present president too. He has to survive a lot of defeat. Now he won, and from what I'm hearing, people want change. No matter, there are some opinion polls that I had locally that they said that the new Patriotic Party, MPP, of Akufo is slotted to win. And I wouldn't be surprised when you take it vis-a-vis the current events, the event in USA, the current presidential, despite all permutations and polls, the business group won against all us. So if you also look at the recent election in Gambia, they demystified Jammeh. He has been there, he has all the trappings to make, but surprisingly he lost to somebody who was little known, no matter, and he conceded. That is interesting. Democracy is taking firm root in Africa. So this looks like a season of opposition parties, because from what I've heard, the race is too close to call, and don't be surprised that there will be surprises. Although the international appraiser is that, well, this man has done well, the economy is okay, a lot of investment is there, but again, are the people there, the real people, because we're getting the dividends. So in a situation like this, people can decide to vote for whatever they believe. I think that is the situation we face. But I believe at the end of the day, it will be a close call election, but the better candidate will win.
All right, Ambassador Ayo Adigun, thank you very much. Now to return vice card to the Ghanaian High Commissioner to Nigeria, who already is back home. He has his voter's card, we hope, and is going to vote in tomorrow's election. William Azuma Kanyurige, you listen to our correspondent, you also listen to Ambassador Ayo Adigun here with us in the studios. The first question is change in the air in Ghana.
Yeah, thank you very much, my brother. Let me begin by saying good morning to all viewers and wish you a blessed day. You would have noticed that I've relocated from my home to a place which is closer to the airport, because this morning I'll be going to meet the Black Queens of Ghana, who are returning from Yaoundé, Cameroon, after placing third in the AFCON Women's Division. My Nigerian brethren will be relieved to learn that our Black Queens deferred in avoiding to meet you in the finals in order not to, what do you call it, create headaches for you. I hope you understand what I mean by that. Because if we had met in the finals, you can guess what would have happened. But on a serious note, I also want to congratulate the female team of Nigeria for the spectacular performance of winning the cup. Cameroon runners-up, who also put up a great show and were great hosts. And of course, my own sisters here, the Black Queens, who also acquitted themselves as worthy ambassadors of Ghana. But I'm entering from this angle for these reasons that I'm going to outline. Number one, what do you call it? Our Black Queens dedicated their third place victory to fair play and peaceful elections in Ghana. And I'm very impressed with that. Related to that also, that I want to flag is that our females, our women, our mothers, when it comes to politics, I happen to be one of those who think that a lot of us men in politics, we do what I call politricks. And most of the women in politics do what I call politics. And we shall be coming back to that. That is why I'm using the female football team as an entry point. The third point that I want to flag is that the day that Ghana met South Africa in that match happened to be Farmers' Day in Ghana. And they also dedicated their third place victory to the farmers of not only Ghana, but Africa, and especially female farmers. Because preceding this discussion was the issue of food security in Africa. And that is also a key issue in relation to the elections, as well. And it's going to play out in the voting pattern tomorrow. And so when you look at what is going to happen tomorrow, there are different angles of entry. You have the rural psychology, you have the urban psychology, you have the ordinary working psychology, you have the elitist psychology. And I will begin from the elitist psychology. A lot of us, the elite, which constitute normally you and I, the way we analyze the voting trends and patterns is not very much the same as those of our brethren who are on the ground in the rural areas, toiling day and night to put food on our table, facing challenges of having access to good drinking water, good roads that are accessible to bring their goods to the urban areas. And so sometimes you see a certain disconnect between the way we look at these things. And I've seen that playing out in this election, and of course in also previous elections, but more this time because the Ghanaian electorate has become more sophisticated than before. It has been an upward trend, and this is what I see as one of the characteristics that are different from previous elections. previous elections, I mean, are not very much different from the current one in terms of the attitude towards conducting peaceful elections. I think there has been a bit of a media hype about tensions and violence, but I have had the opportunity to travel in the past 2 to 3 months, coming to Ghana for different assignments at Kofi Annan and elsewhere, and moving up north, just trying to see for myself what is happening on the ground. And the elections, the campaigns have been conducted generally in a very peaceful and tolerant manner. Hardly any skirmishes. The kind of teasing that I used to see in previous elections when one party was having its campaign, especially the two major political parties, you didn't see much of that. But this time round, you notice that because of the sophistication, the parties even adopted the method of keep fit club walks at weekends. And sometimes they had them at the same time, in the same day, in the same area, and that raised the opportunity for likely conflict. Once or twice or 3 times in the country, you had some exchanges here and there, but I wouldn't describe them as violence at all. So on the whole, I think we are going into the elections better prepared than previous elections. And what my brother called hiccups also is part of the process of maturing, where the current Electoral Commission decided to test the law, and in order to get some parties disqualified, the Supreme Court thought otherwise, that there needed to be more fairness, not a question of illegality. And I think all that is part of deepening the process of rule of law and fine-tuning our electoral laws moving forward. So I would say that we are moving into tomorrow's elections as a country with a more sophisticated electorate, demanding more accountability. And in Ghana, the elections are won in terms of campaigning of 1 month, couple of weeks to the election, not before. And we are going to see what will happen after tomorrow. That's what I can say as an entry point.
All right, that's the Ghanaian High Commissioner to Nigeria, Ambassador William Azuma Kanyurige, speaking to us via Skype from Accra. Thanks also for the analogy. Ghana decided to dodge Nigeria in the finals, so it was good you opted to place third rather than losing to Nigeria in the finals. Once again, we'd like to thank you and wish you the very best as you go ahead with your elections tomorrow. But let me ask our correspondent, Mohammed Ali, this question. What is the earliest time that the country would expect the results? I mean, there was some tension, if you recall, in 2008, where it seemed that you needed some fixers to get the elections right in 2008. But what is the earliest time they will expect the outcome of tomorrow's election?
Actually, the Electoral Commission is saying that it has already fashioned a new system of ensuring that the results are sent in electronically, and that they have tested 75 out of the 200 and out of the 28,000 polling station, and it was all successful. So the results are expected in maybe in less than 48 hours. They should be able to have a fair result of what's transpired and what is happening across all the 10 regions of the country. The electronic devices and as well as the reforms introduced by the Electoral Commission, according to the Electoral Commission, is going to fast track the result, and they're expecting everything to be almost ready within 48 hours.
All right, thank you very much, Mohammed Ali, who's in Ghana for us via Skype. And of course, thank you very much for joining us. I know as the day progresses, and of course tomorrow, we'll continue to get more reports from Ghana on the elections. Thank you very much. And of course, we want to say a very big thank you to Nigeria's former ambassador to Liberia. That's Ambassador Ayo Adigun. Thank you for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Now just to indicate, when we were having our newspaper review this morning, of course, we had an update on the abduction of a Radio Benue journalist. We indicated that the headline, page 6 of Daily Trust, stated that the abductors were demanding 80 million naira. The latest news we understand is that the abducted journalist, female journalist, has been freed. So she's been freed. That's from Benue, Radio Benue journalist released by her abductors. That's the latest that we have. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll take a couple of our companion segments. All right, straight away we'll go on to sports. Let's go over to our sports desk.
Former FIFA President Blatter's 6-year ban from football has been upheld after an appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sports, CAS. The 80-year-old Suez was banned over ethics breaches as his 17 years as head of football's world governing body ended in a corruption scandal in 2015. He was found to have made a £1.3 million disloyal payment to ex-UEFA boss Michel Platini, but both deny any wrongdoing. CAS described the payment as an undue gift with no contractual basis. FIFA suspended Blatter and former France international Platini for 8 years in December, but the bans were reduced to 6 years by its appeals committee. Manchester City striker Sergio Aguero has been banned for 4 matches.
I am Oluchukwu Anoku. We expect dust haze to persist over the extreme part of the country and the central cities. The southern cities will continue to witness partly cloudy to cloudy conditions, with the exception of Eket axis that may witness some showers in the morning. While afternoon, we expect dust haze to persist with local visibility of 1 to 3 kilometers around the northeastern part of the country, while the central will still be under dust haze. The south will witness partly cloudy conditions. The stretch of the coast will see some isolated thundery showers. I leave you with temperature forecast. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.
And there you have the weather prospect for the remaining part of the day. Do hope that you have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining us. The program returns again at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. I am Rhoda Obo.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join Rhoda in thanking you for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your day too.
Boy, climb this thing now. No be only to connect lights.
Come do on yourself now.
Now wow. Oh boy, come down now. Oga Kasali electrician who would they look for with this? Oh. Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry, I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
Oh boy, what you talk makes sense. Oh boy, no could carry this ladder from over.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Gas pipelines are the arteries for powering electricity. When the artery is burst, then the entire system collapses. Vandalizing gas pipelines is a criminal offense against the Nigerian